Good morning, families. So good to see you on this wonderful Wednesday. Hopefully your day started out great and you've got on your Edmentum and you've checked our Google page, which I do apologize, but I haven't put any new videos on there in a few days. It has been so crazy busy up here, which I know you probably know what it's like because you have been very busy on your Edmentum. So we'll try to get caught up a little today. We're going to read a book called The Invisible Boy by Trudy Ludwig and illustrated by Patrice Barton. And this will be my first time to ever read the book. The reason I got this book is because Mrs. Pierce, another 5th grade teacher here in our building, put it on her Google Classroom wish list. So I thought if Mrs. Pierce wants that book, it must be a good one. So I'm going to add it to my Google Classroom wish list too. And then one of my friends bought it from that wish list and got it sent to us for us to enjoy. So let's get started. Oh, and what we want to try to do today. We've talked about text connections, which means that we find something in this book that can connect back to maybe I Like Myself that we read, or Ishy, or Listening with My Heart, or Our Class as a Family, or any other book you've read, or movie, because movies are actually text too, because the actors and actresses learn their lines from scripts, which are text. We could also try to make a text to self connection. So that means we're reading the book and then we're like, oh, I can relate to that. I've had a dog before. Or, oh, I can relate to that because I remember feeling sad too. And that would be a text to self connection. So today we are going to try to make a text to text connection or a text to self connection or both. So let's get started. Trudy Ludwig, The Invisible Boy. Can you see Brian, the invisible boy? Even Mrs. Carlotti has trouble noticing him in her classroom. She's too busy dealing with Nathan and Sophie. Nathan has problems with what Mrs. Carlotti calls volume control. He uses his outside voice inside too much. Sophie whines and complains when she doesn't get her way. Nathan and Sophie take up a lot of space. Brian doesn't. When the bell rings for recess, Micah and JT take turns choosing kids for their kickball teams. The best players get picked first. Then the best friends of the best players. Then the friends of the best friends. Only Brian is left, still waiting and hoping. JT glances in Brian's direction and just as quickly looks away. We've got enough players for each team, he tells the others. Let's play ball. See Brian over here? In the cafeteria, Madison and her friends talk about her birthday party. The rope swing over the pool was awesome, says JT. Yeah, so was the water slide, adds Fiona. That was the best pool party ever. I'm so glad you guys had fun, says Madison. Everybody did, except Brian. He wasn't invited. At choosing time, while the other kids play board games and read, Brian sits at his table, doing what he loves to do best. He draws fire-breathing dragons, scaling tall buildings. Space aliens locked in intergalactic battles. Greedy pirates digging for treasure. And superheroes with the power to make friends wherever they go. On Monday morning, Mrs. Carlotti introduces Justin, a new student to the class. Brian smiles shyly at him. Some of the other kids sneak looks at Justin, trying to figure out if he's cool enough to be their friend. They haven't quite made up their minds yet. At lunch, Madison and JT watch Justin eat with chopsticks. "What's that?" asks Madison as she points to Justin's food. "It's bulgogi." "Well, what?" "Bulgogi. It's Korean barbecued beef. My grandma made it for me. It's really good. Do you want to try some?" "There's no way I'd eat bulgogi." And the kids laugh. All of them. That is, except Brian. He sits there wondering which is worse, being laughed at or feeling invisible. The next day, when Justin goes to his cubby to put away his backpack, he notices a piece of paper with his name on it. "Justin, I thought the bulgogi looked good." Brian, "Yum." See, he drew a cool picture there of him. At morning recess, Brian finds a piece of chalk on the ground and starts drawing away. "You're Brian, right?" "Yeah. Thanks for the note." "Hey, Justin," Emilio calls out from the tetherball court. "You're up next." "Sorry, I gotta go," says Justin. "By the way, that's a really cool drawing," he adds before taking off. And look, you notice some colors on Brian now? Just slightly. There's a little bit of green, a little bit of yellow. His lips are starting to turn a little pinkish. Back in class, Mrs. Carlotti asked the kids to team up in 2s or 3s for a special project. The kids scurry around the room to pair off. Brian heads towards Justin. "I'm already with Justin," says Emilio. "Find somebody else." Brian looks at the floor, wishing he could draw a hole right there to swallow him up. "Mrs. Carlotti said we can have up to 3 people on our group. We're only 2. Come on, Emilio. Let him work with us." "Okay, I guess." And look, Brian's starting to get a little more color to him. Mrs. Carlotti gives the class directions for the project. Your assignment is to work together to write a story about what you see in that photograph. Use your imagination and have fun. "Whoa, cool," says Emilio. "What kind of people do you think would live in houses like that?" "I don't know, but I bet Brian could draw them to go with our story," says Justin. Brian smiles as he takes out his lucky pen. And now look at Brian. You can see him now. Then it shows Brian looking at the pictures here with the other kids, and then they're starting on their project, and they're getting their writing. It says, "The crooked story we made up on the spot." And they've got some costumes to go with it, and they're ready to show the class. It's lunchtime again. Brian's least favorite part of the day. Another 20 long minutes of kids talking and laughing with everyone else but him. "Brian!" he hears someone shout. "Hey, Brian, over here!" Brian runs and sees Justin waving him over. Emilio nods at Brian as he makes room for him at the table. Cookie? Thanks. Maybe, just maybe, Brian's not so invisible after all. So, what do you think about this book? And you've got to notice that at the beginning, Brian, they kind of make him look a little invisible in black and white there and in gray. And then throughout the book, whenever he starts having people make friends with him and try to get him to join in, then he starts to change colors. So I'm kind of thinking maybe that has to do with the way he feels. This is how he feels when he's all alone without friends. And then he starts to feel alive and colorful whenever he has friends to include him. Have you ever felt that way? So I want you to do a quick write today. It's completely optional. It's not for a grade. And talk about how you feel about this book and how it would feel to be invisible. Have you ever felt that way? Or do you know somebody that's ever felt that way and maybe you pulled them out of their shell and you included them in your group to help make them feel like they were a part of something? So you guys have a great day and try to make a new friend today. I will see you Thursday.